Welcome to English Literature and Critical Theory. In this video, I will give you further effective tips on how to do a research successfully and a research paper that is worth its name, its designation. I thank all of you for receiving well my other video as to tips on a successful or tips for a successful PhD. Now that video was more concerned with things extrinsic. That is what a research paper should not be, right? So in this video, this is a complementary video to that one. I would try to tell you what a research paper is. So, and since my discipline is English studies broadly, we generally follow the MLA handbook or the MLA style. So, my lecture will be in tandem with the prescriptions of the entire MLA gamut, and more or less this holds good for other research disciplines also, at least in humanities and social sciences. So without spending further time on introduction, let me begin first of all, I have said it earlier also, a research paper is an original contribution to knowledge, and for that very matter there is a marked difference between a research paper and a personal essay. Unfortunately, in our part of the world, we often do not maintain that. Many people get PhDs without the very basic idea that there is a difference between a newspaper article or magazine article and a research paper. The difference, now you remember, is at two levels. The first one is articles in newspapers, magazines, etc. These are what we call basically personal essays. They express more their author's views, whims, and ideas than what is exactly at stake in that matter. It is true not only about ordinary writer like you and me, but great writers maybe like Shashi Tharoor or Charles Lamb. So they are all masters of the personal styles of essay writing. So however great a person is, if it is not a research writing, its final value will only be that of a personal essay, part of which will be true, but by and large, this is not objective knowledge. Second point, the difference of, the second point of difference between the two is that for the very reason that this research paper is not a personal essay, and those essays and articles in magazines and all are personal essays, there is a lot of quotations, citations, etc. in a research paper or your thesis or your dissertation, which are conspicuous by their absence in personal essays. Even when they are present, they are in a very they are present in a very whimsical way. Just look at the books of this great scholar. Diderot is a scholar, but since he is not trained in the discipline, his referencing is way too bad. You can have a look at Hinduism, a religion to live by, etc. So when we write research writing, we believe that we are engaging in a dialogue with all the scholars that have walked before us in this field, and all the scholars who would work in future in that field, including myself. As I said, PhD is not the end but the beginning. So accordingly, the first thing we have understood that research paper is not only an original contribution to knowledge, but it is radically different from a personal essay. We can at best call it an objective essay or impersonal essay, but I would not advise you to use the term essay at all, because the term essay itself carries some kind of a creativity in it, which is not encouraged in research in terms of writing style. Creativity is always the heart and soul of research, but not in terms of style only. What you bring to the table, what new dish you bring to the table, that matters. Though unfortunately, it is not followed, but we have to follow. That is why our research index of our country and all are going down. Now, secondly, for that matter to happen, when you need to make an original contribution to the field, first you need to know your field. That is your subfield or area. There, your instructor or guide would help you. But if you have been a precocious student and a good reader during your PG days or even honors days, you would yourself know that there are, certain areas where works have not been done and they need to be done. All right. So we call this research gap. Please remember, research gap is a very important thing for effective research. You have to show that there is a gap of information and findings in a particular area. For that you need to take research, otherwise research is meaningless. It becomes only incremental. I mean, it increases your degree or gives you increment, I call it incremental, PhD. Or it only augments the volume of existing body of books but not the body of knowledge. So research gap. Now, traditionally, this term has been associated more with science and social sciences, and literature has been more or less a free domain because we have always believed that literature is a matter of interpretation, and so is literary research. So, on that belief, n number of people, for example, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in India, did research on D.H. Lawrence. So, my guide used to say that D.H. Lawrence is a research industry, and then later it turned to Indian English writing, I mean the audience or the takers, or African American literature in India. So these two again became research industries. So you are repeating same run of the mill things, you are reproducing. That is awfully bad, awfully bad. It is bad in our personal interest, it is very bad in our national interest. Nation above all, we must, you know, uh, uplift the name of our nation in research domain also. So let us be honest to ourselves and to our research. And then finally, it is bad for knowledge. So if you don't have anything new to say, you write a book, new book, create a book, but don't do a PhD, you know, under the under the garb of a PhD. You don't write just another book like Ramjilal and all that. Then only our things will go upward. So, and you can do it. That is why I'm telling you, because many of you haven't been told in this way. So people have been repeating this. So now this generation is, much more advanced. They have all the information due to the internet. Only the proper methodologies have to be told. So, so please find the research gap in your area. I will give an example so that it becomes crystal clear. Suppose last year Edward Said has published, I mean published last year, so published, not has published. Last year Edward Said published his Orientalism, an excellent work on the misrepresentation of the colonizer by the, sorry, misrepresentation of the colonizer by the colonized. This is a good work. Now how to add on to this? So there are two research gaps in this, as you can see now, I mean directly. One is that it is gender blind. While discussing colonizer and colonized, it does not take into account whether the colonizer that is representing is a male or a female, or the colonized that is being represented is a male or a female or even a third gender. I've said in another video. So that is a research gap. It was picked up and extended by Gayatri Spivak. Though she did not say, she did not do a PhD, but these are research papers, and indirectly or directly, she meant that this is a kind of, things that are missing in Orientalism. So I think you got the point now. The same thing was again done in Bhabha. Bhabha found a huge gap because Orientalism only gave one side, how the colonizer represented the colonized. But it, in many cases, this has been mutual according to Bhabha. In many places, we also represented them. Say Tagore, Vivekananda, etc. So of course, that is addressed in an essay by Said in that book. I did a video on that yesterday, Crisis in Orientalism. But still, the mutuality of colonizer and colonized's representation is not reflected in Orientalism as much as it would have been. So Bhabha took that gap and gave his theory of hybridity, etc., so on and so forth. So these are excellent example of research works. A third work done under Said's own guidance is by Gauri Vishwanath, Mask of Conquest, Literary Studies and British Rule in India. That is, she studied how the literature syllabuses in English in the Indian universities. It was a, I think, if I'm not mistaken, postdoctoral research under Sai's guidance. So that those syllabi, those course content itself selectively attacked Hinduism, you know, and the superiority of Christianity and inferiority of Hinduism, the superiority as a scientific nature of Christian belief and inferior nature of unscientific nature of Hindu belief, etc., etc. These were the essays that were set in questions of Calcutta University. They said, so you don't have scope from the beginning. It is given that the Orientals are inferior. But anyway, this thing, though it was not there, it was there inside, but the syllabi or the canon part was not there. So Gauri Biswanath actually uh, fulfilled the gap. And then she visited the archives, dug out the old question papers of the 1860s, 70s of Calcutta University and other universities and did it. So I gave three examples. Now the fourth example, ironically, is Said's own. That's why I said we ourselves may add on to our research, and it's not a matter of shame or embarrassment. So in Culture and Imperialism, he addressed many of the allegations that was raised against Orientalism, one being that it was raised by Ijaz Ahmed mainly, that by the Orient we always understood India, you know, India, the Indian subcontinent, or maybe China and other. But Said's Orientalism is basically centered on misrepresentation of the Middle East only, though by implication it applies to India as well. So he breached that gap in culture and imperialism. So this is what is research gap. You take an author-centric approach, sir. I won't say dated, but not so much in fashion now. Thematic, you may combine authors, but you choose a theme. And even if you take an author, it is not a study of life and works of that author, like life and works of Tristram Shandy Gentleman. Till date, many people do it, but that's not a research, it's a compilation. You take an area and subject and find the gap that is there. Suppose an issue has been explored from the point of view of class. Now you can bring in gender, or from the point of view of location an issue has been explored. But then you say, so say the queer life in Indian metropolis. I'm giving a vague general, like, this is not a good research topic. Queer life in an Indian metropolis, is a huge topic. No guide will allow that. You have to customize it. Either you have to choose specific metropolitan cities. No good guide will allow this, I'm saying. Or if you want to take all Indian metropolis, you have to take a time frame, say 5 years, 10 years, like that. Or colon select cities, like that. Anyway, so queer life in metropolitan one has done as represented in literary text. So the next person can find the research gap to be in terms of gender, though it sounds counterintuitive, but it is, because mostly we work on gay life. So when it's a queer, the lesbian aspect may be missing, or within that queer life in the metropolis as represented in literature, the class aspect may be missing in that research. So next researcher brings that in, or another researcher brings up the representation of the rural queer in the Indian novels. Hardly there is any, but still there are. And if not, that queer is a broad term, it does not mean gay actually or lesbian. It means more than that. Any non-normative functioning or any non-normative performance of one's sexuality is queer. Breaking down, that is the general understood meaning. So another can take that up. All right, this is research gap. So 2 points we have covered and discussed till now. First one is research paper is an academic or professional writing. It is a reference writing, not a personal essay. Second thing is you must have a research gap if you don't want your research to be just another Ramjilal book, and which is research gap you have to identify. We expect the guide to do all these things. So no, guide's job is this one. I have told you in a way to all of you who are listening and have not done a PhD or aspire to do. So you can take me as a mental guide or mentor. that this is your job. Guide needs to tell you that you have to identify research gap, or he may drop hints as I have dropped, that these are the areas where there are gaps. But don't expect him or her to do that thing. That is not good. Actually, you should find that. Now, the third very important point after this two is basically your thesis statement. Many people have never been told what is a thesis statement, okay? Even who have done from good institutions. I have had a talk with a very good scholar this morning who actually is in touch with me from others. I was surprised that coursework has been done, but he doesn't know what is it. I mean, he hasn't been told what is a thesis statement. A thesis statement is preferably one statement. In one statement or sentence, you state in the very beginning of the thesis, in introduction, say paragraph 1, that this research is about this thing. This you can take to be the Gayatri Mantra or Kalma or Ave Maria prayer, I mean, according to your religion, of your thesis. For example, uh, the say the representation of queer life in Indian fiction is primarily focused only on the sexual aspects of queer lives. It is not, I am giving a research statement. So this is your finding, this is your problem in a way, that Indian novels have not, for example, or queer novels have not dealt the queer life in their totality, but only with respect to their sexuality. Or or say romanticism, eco-criticism is doing lot of reworking on romanticism. So you can say that the contemporary eco-critical works on romanticism have failed to take into account the romantic poets major stylistic preoccupation. I'm not defending this thesis statement. This is maybe bizarre statement, but I'm giving an example. It's not bizarre, but it's an example. So this is your thesis statement. So your entire thesis will move around this, and you will prove or disprove this. In a way, what we call a hypothesis, a research statement is a condensed form of that hypothesis. But as it is in literature or humanities, the hypothesis is not as palpable as in natural sciences, where they start with a work. There are a lot of variations, but basic level, as I always give my student the example, say a chemist may begin with the hypothesis that there is a lot of arsenic in the water of, say, Diffu in Assam, because he has seen in some places there is. But after a total research mode, he finds that this is true or untrue. That way we cannot have that kind of a conclusive hypothesis in literature, because it is always a matter of how you view things also. But still, you have to have something, otherwise it is again writing, beating about the bush, or beating around bush, we say. So uh, not again beating like beating the Middle East like George Bush. That is Orientalism. So sorry for the jokes apart. So please try to, at the earliest, even as you write your proposal or plan your proposal, try to have a thesis statement. Your instructor's job is to help you shape up the thesis statement, or or to help you change your thesis statement, but not to write your thesis statement for you. Then the very first step will go wrong. Okay, so I hope this lecture would be quite useful. In fact, I am confident, because at least two things that I have said. The first thing may be known, that academic writing and non-academic writing, but the issue of research gap and thesis statement is often missed out even in courseworks in Indian universities. So make good use of this insight and proceed with your research. I'll come up with other videos after a certain period of time, and you also let me know if you need any explanations, etc. Thank you so much for listening. Happy research. Let us build a knowledge community together. We are all equal, actually. There is no high. I'm an instructor or a guide or supervisor because I started the journey a few years ahead of you. and I have my supervisors. There's a, like, it's a continuum. So, and it's a shared knowledge, because in your chosen area, if you do research sincerely, even your supervisor won't know. You are the world expert. He will or she will only give you the directions of how to phrase things, how to go about it, but the domain and the knowledge is your own. Thank you very much. Happy research again, and happy new year 2021 in advance.